Hey. So, yesterday I took you all on a little tour of, the new cage that we bought for our rats. And part of the reason why we bought that cage is because we are going to be adopting a new, group of rats relatively soon. And I don't think I talked about in that video why we're going to be adopting a new group of rats. And that's actually kind of a long story. So, you know, settle in, folks. So, I'm just gonna sell some potions, because that's a high-level Diablo strategy that I know, which is why I'm a nationally known super player of this game, and not just a casual. I'm definitely not a casual at Diablo. Anyway. My story as a rat owner is... what is it? 2.5, 3, 4 years maybe? Good lord, that's a long time actually. It's been several years anyway. I don't actually know exactly how long I've been a rat owner. That's kind of weird. I'm bad at time. I'm absolutely miserably terrible at time. But we adopted 2 rats, me and my roommate, sharing the costs in order to make it a little bit less daunting. You know, vet bills and stuff like that can be pretty expensive. We adopted a couple of white rats that I found at a pet store. And we'd been talking about adopting some kind of a pet for the apartment. Because we both want pets, and, you know, sharing the cost seemed like a good idea. So we adopted a couple of rats that I found at a pet store. We managed to find a fairly cheap cage for them, and, you know, started researching a bunch of research on how to care for rats and what do they need, and how do you house them in a thing, and so on and so forth. I'm just gonna go grab a gem. Thank you. So we adopted a couple of white rats, and they we, being very inexperienced owners, we didn't really, mostly we didn't really know what the hell we were doing, which, you know, is not a catastrophic problem or anything, but they were sick almost immediately. And the reason for that is that they were pet store rats. And something I've mentioned a couple of times before, perhaps, is that rats you buy from a pet store will generally be intended to be used as food for reptiles, especially snakes. And so the people who breed them aren't necessarily picky about how they breed, which means there's a lot of inbreeding, which means there's a lot of really, really bad genes in their gene pools, which means they get sick. And our rats certainly were sick, because, again, also because they were kept in a pet store, and pet stores tend to keep their rats on sawdust or, you know, various kinds of tree bedding, which is really, really bad for rats. Their respiratory systems can't handle it. So when we got them, and we didn't know this at the time, they both had respiratory infections right away. And we managed to get them to a veterinarian, prescribed some antibiotics, and that cleared the infections up for one of them. The other one, the infection cleared up for a while, but then it came back, and we gave her more antibiotics, and it cleared up, but then it came back, and we gave her more antibiotics, and cleared up, and then it came back, and that went on for a while, and the infections stayed for longer and longer, and the antibiotic did less and less, and she started losing weight, and just deteriorating in general, to the point where we were hand-feeding her every single day. She couldn't really eat normal food anymore, because she was so tired and emaciated, so we were hand-feeding her just just really nutritious, just stuff with lots of fat in it, stuff with lots of calories in it, just to try and keep her weight up. And we didn't know it at the time, but it was a losing battle from the start. My personal theory, and it's impossible to confirm because, you know, it's not really worth putting a rat under anesthetic to do to do, you know, X-ray pictures or something of it because they don't survive it. They die. So you can never really be sure. But my personal theory is she had some kind of a lung tumor. And the reason I think so is because tumors are incredibly common in pet store rats. Or some kind of like thing going on inside her that couldn't be fixed with antibiotics, and which caused her to be constantly reinfected with like literally whatever. Anything that was around she'd get infected by it or reinfected by it. I should probably buy some armor for my mercenary, shouldn't I? And it was a cycle, and it was bad, and it was rough on her. Antibiotics are really hard on the system of a young rat like her. And eventually what happened was that she started having these periods of choking. That's what it looked like. And we didn't know what to do. Online, the advice for a rat that's choking is to just leave them alone. They often accidentally choke on stuff, and you generally, so long as they can breathe, you just need to leave them alone, and they'll eventually work their way through it. But in this case, she was not choking, she was having the first signs of a heart attack, which eventually hit, and she died. While I was in the other room, she died, and I found her lying in the bottom of the cage, and that was it was a tough day. I'll tell you what. So she died, but we still had her sister left. Rats do not do well alone. They're pack creatures. They have a social structure, and they need to have a social group around them. You should never have only one rat. If at all possible, you should have 3 or 4 rats, like a proper group of them, so that they can have proper interaction and stuff. And so we were kind of having lost our first rat before she was even, I think, a year old. We were kind of desperately looking around for some way to get some companions for our remaining rat, so that she wouldn't be alone, and so that she wouldn't also deteriorate and you know, become depressed and kind of and die way too early. And so we went looking around in the Facebook groups for rat owners and see if anyone had litters that were ready to be adopted. And nobody really did at the time, except one person who was a proper rat breeder, but who also kept snakes. And she used some of her rats as food for the snakes. And she'd become a breeder specifically, I think, so that she would be able to, you know, have a food source for her pet snake in part. And also because she likes rats and she keeps them as pets. But, you know, it was a double thing. And she had a feeder rat. That is, again, a rat that's bred to be fed to snakes that she'd gotten from somewhere else, that her snake had not wanted to eat, and she didn't know why. It turns out that rat was pregnant and gave birth to a little litter of pups, right at the right time when we needed to find some young new companions for our remaining rat. So we adopted 3 of those, which we should really have known better than to do that. Not because again, this was a rat that she had bought from somewhere else specifically to use as food for her snake. So it wasn't really her fault. But we adopted 3 feeder rats, and they were so lovely. It's hard to explain, really, just how lovely young rats are. They're the exact right mix of curious and stupid and hyper energetic, and it's such a delight to have them around. It's just a delight to be around them and watch them run around and be idiots and, you know, fall over and tussle with each other. And so we fell completely in love with these little assholes, and they provided a very good companion for our remaining first rat, who lived on for a very long time for a feeder rat, really. She grew to be, I think, two and a half years old, something like that, before she finally got a cancer that became malignant and it killed her. Or rather, we decided to have her put down before the cancer could make her suffer too much. And then we had the 3 little ones left. And yeah, I mean, like I said, they were a delight, all of them. And we adored them very much. But, you know, rats being rats, they don't live that long. So this year, all 3 of them will be dead. The first one died back in August. She'd always been kind of the runt of the litter, but she'd never really been sick in any way that we could identify. But she developed cancers. We believe there were ovarian cancers, and there really isn't anything you can do about ovarian cancer in a rat, because again, they can't survive surgery. So there's really no point in trying to do something like that. She developed ovarian cancer. She started bleeding from those cancers, so we had to take her to the vet pretty suddenly and let her go. That was in August, I think. And then a few weeks ago, one of the other ones who had been sick for a while, she had had a lot of lung infections and lung trouble, which again, common in feeder rats, as it turns out. And she developed, we think it was a blood clot of some kind, that basically cut off circulation down her back and left her paralyzed from the waist down. She couldn't walk, like she could barely sort of drag herself around the cage. She couldn't clean herself, she couldn't really climb anything, which is kind of important for rats to be able to do that. And we on that very day when we found her like that, we had to go and get her put down, because that was not... rats can't live like that. They just can't. They need to be able to clean themselves. Oh, great positioning there, mercenary. Really useful. Glad I bought you that armor to help you survive. Anyway, where was I? Right, yes, she was paralyzed and we had to have her put down, and that was 2 weeks ago. Which left us with one remaining sister of that group of 3 that we adopted to keep our very first, one of our first rats company. She, in the weeks since her sister's death, and we don't, it might be that her sister's death just took a lot out of her, we don't know. She has been getting worse really, really quickly. I think it's a tumor in her brain, a pituitary gland tumor, maybe, something like that. It certainly seems to be neurological. She's lost her coordination. She has lost a hell of a lot of weight. She's underweight at this point. And she's doing, well, honestly, pretty terribly. And so tomorrow, in about it's almost 3 a.m. right now. In about 5 hours, I will call the vet and arrange for a consultation, and we'll put her to sleep, because she does not, it's not a worthy life for her either. A lot of rat owners, when you talk to them, will tell you that being a rat owner in anything like the long term means you have to deal with a lot of goodbyes. Because rats don't live very long. It's just in the nature of the thing.
I am overburdened.
And yeah. It's been a rough 4 months. 4 or 5 months. Losing my grandmother earlier in the year, which really fucking Good lord, that fucked me up. And then losing 3 of my pets in such rapid succession right after, it's been a lot. It's been a lot. So, when tomorrow, once we have put down the last of the 3 sisters, the 3 feeder rats we adopted, we'll have 2 rats left that I haven't told you about yet. These 2 we adopted earlier this year. And they, unlike the other rats we've had, are breeder rats. These are what's called fancy rats, which is to say they are rats that have a pedigree, that were bred from, you know, not from siblings, and, you know, have decent genetics. And so far, it's borne out that they have never gotten sick or had any kind of health problems in the time that we've had them. Which, you know, rats being rats, they might, you know, just be waiting on it. But yeah, we've got 2 left, and they're adorable, and they're gorgeous, and I love them. I love them very much. And I'm so happy that I still have them.
What can I do for you?
And yeah, we'll have 2 left, which is, like I said earlier, rats should not be kept alone, and if possible, you should keep them in groups of more than 2. Like, if you have the space and the resources for it, because they need to have their social groups. So we are going to be adopting probably 3 more from a reputable breeder, someone who like, where they have a pedigree, and we know that there hasn't been a bunch of inbreeding and incest in their family line, and they are gonna be genetically healthy, if nothing else.
Good day.
So that's what we're gonna be doing. And I look forward to meeting the new little ones once we find... We need to first find a breeder who's got rats available, obviously. Oh, good lord. I love the sorceress. And that's what the big new cage is for. It's for them once we find them and adopt them. But tomorrow is gonna be a hard day. It's gonna be a really, really hard day. It's gonna fucking suck, to be honest. Happiest month of the year. Christmas.
As a token of my regret, stay a while and listen.
Yeah. Tomorrow's gonna suck. And it's gonna knock me out a bit, I think. And soon after, in like a few days, I'll be heading to see my family. For Christmas, specifically. I have my parents split up when I was young, so I've got 2 families, essentially, that I need to see for Christmas, and I'm going to be seeing my mother's side this middle of the month, and I'll be with my father's side of the family for actual Christmas Eve and stuff like that. But yeah, I'll be going to see my mother's side of the family, and I'm hoping it'll be a bit of a recovery time for me. Kind of recharge a little bit and get back on my feet, because Lord knows I feel knocked down right now. And it's not... YouTube isn't making it any easier, because YouTube wants me to put out new content, because it's not going to show people my old content. Why would it ever do that? So there's that pressure too, because that is my source of income these days, is YouTube and Patreon, of course, which is like each of them account for about half of my income. So I can't not make videos. So hopefully once I'm back from my mother's side of the family Christmas thing, I'll be able to hunker down and start producing some videos on a somewhat faster schedule again. But for the moment, I'm pretty depressed, I'll be honest. I'm pretty depressed. And I'm gonna stay depressed for a while. because it's been a rough few months. So yeah, I'll vlog again after in a couple of days maybe. See you then. Thanks for watching.